a story came out. I read it on XFLNewsHub.com. It was an article by Mike Mitchell. And the headline read, Pat McAfee potentially passing on the XFL gig. And I went, what? To be very clear, Pat McAfee is a large part of why I'm even excited to watch the XFL. You know, I want to watch Pat McAfee work as a field reporter on the sidelines of XFL games. And if he's not there, to me, that's a gigantic disappointment to the league. And so the story goes that Pat McAfee might pull out after week 1 of the XFL season. Now, by the way, I made a whole video. I talked about the 3 things I'm excited for in the XFL. I'm a big Pat McAfee fan. I don't really listen to his show, but every time I watch Pat McAfee on television, he's incredibly relatable. He's interesting. He's fun. He's probably the best person to cover live sports I've ever seen in my life because he's not stuffy. He's not super professional. He's not super corporate. He's himself. He's totally his own brand, and I find it refreshing, fun, entertaining. He's my favorite, analyst in sports that works on live television. And so I got to say, my opinion on all of this is that, so the rumor right now is that Pat McAfee is going, this is not my opinion, this is the rumor that's going around. The rumor is, and what is kind of being said, is that Pat McAfee is going to work the first week of the XFL season, see how it goes, test it out. And if things don't go well, he's not going to continue the rest of the year. It's not about the pay. It's not about the travel. The rumor is it's the job itself. So right now he's scheduled to do the game between the Dallas Renegades and the St. Louis Battlehawks on Sunday, February 9th on ESPN. But what people don't realize about the field analyst position is it's actually a lot of scripted stand-up parts. They'll be talking, let's flip to Zach on the sideline, and Zach, myself, I'd basically read a script off a piece of paper. All right, back to you guys in the booth. It's very interesting and weird, and that's really not what I think makes Pat McAfee great. What makes Pat McAfee great is when Pat McAfee's being himself and he's being off the cuff and being totally authentic and allowed to have fun with it. And so I honestly don't believe Pat McAfee wants to back out of the XFL. I believe what's happening here is this rumor came from Pat McAfee and his people. This is my belief. I have no sources here. My belief, though, is that this came from McAfee and his people because I think he's posturing with ESPN to say, hey, I want to have things my way. If you don't want to give me my way, I'm not going to do this. Here's the reality. I believe that ESPN would be making a gigantic mistake if they tried to, A, control Pat McAfee, or B, let him walk away and not do the XFL. Let's be very clear. Pat McAfee doesn't need the money, doesn't need the job. He's got a great show. He does a lot of other stuff. ESPN needs Pat McAfee to do this role more than Pat McAfee needs to do this role. So I really think Pat has all the leverage here, and I think this is somewhat of a threat. He's saying, hey, if you don't give me what I want, I'm not going to do this job. But again, I think ESPN has it totally wrong here. I've worked for ESPN before. I've been on the sidelines for them doing camera operation stuff and all kinds of stuff. They are a controlling company to work for. I'm not a fan of them. I would never want to work for them. They're hard to work for. And I think if ESPN has any brains at all, they'll recognize, hey, Pat McAfee's a great asset. And why in the world would you try to control a great asset or put Pat McAfee in a box? Again, Pat McAfee has a stand-up background. He's got a great stand-up special on YouTube, and he's best when he's off the cuff being himself. Why would you try to control him? I just think it's awful. And I think, man, if ESPN, Pat McAfee is good for the XFL. Pat McAfee is good for that league. And if ESPN has any brains at all, they'll get out of the way. They'll allow Pat to do things his way. They'll support him. They'll give him the tools he needs, and they'll say, hey, Pat, we want you here. We want to work with you. However you want to do it, we're willing to give you whatever platform you want because you're good for the league. You're entertaining, you're fun, and people want to hear you talk about our sport. And so if ESPN has any brains at all, they're going to give Pat McAfee all the freedom he wants. Now, the sad reality is I don't think that's necessarily, I hope it happens. I think that'd be amazing. That's not how ESPN works. I've worked for them. They're a controlling bunch of people. They're frustrating to work for. They don't even let their employees have their own Twitter handles. It's very bizarre. And so I don't know that Pat McAfee's going to get what he wants, to get the freedom he deserves, and I think it's best for him. Because as a creator, again, it's better for him to just be given a rope and say, hey, go do your own thing. We're not going to try to control you, but I don't know that ESPN has the capacity or the vision to even see that as a possibility. And so if Pat McAfee ends up not doing the XFL season, it's on ESPN, in my opinion. I think he'd be making a huge mistake. It'd be very dumb of them. And it's on them. They got to figure out a way to make it work with Pat McAfee. He's too good for their sport. He's one of the reasons I want to watch it. And I think I speak for a lot of people when I say that. Part of why I want to watch the XFL is so that I can watch Pat McAfee do his thing talking about football live.